Hello, and good morning, my second and third grade readers. I'm so happy to see you again here today for At Home with APS. Today, we're going to be learning a new word of the day with me, and we're also going to be doing some fun work with nouns and proper nouns with Miss Kraft. And then we're going to have a beautiful read aloud with Miss Kay, and we're going to finish up today's episode with Miss Lori as she helps us write an informational report. To prepare for today's lesson, you will need some paper, a couple of pieces, and a pencil. All right, are you ready, learners? Let's get started. So last time we met, we had a different word of the day. It's up here. Do you remember it? It's environment. And we said environment is the surroundings in which a person, an animal, or a plant lives. And we said, with our essential question, if you'll remember, how do we react to changes in nature? And so we read a story that talked a little bit about a special environment, the rainforest, and we were looking for changes in that environment as we read the book. Well, today's word of the day is another example of changes in environment. And we're going to have a story with Ms. Kay that talks about some of those changes as well. Now, this word you may have seen before, but let me just go ahead and take down our word from previously. We don't need it anymore. I love this invention that Ms. Kay made. It's pretty cool. A little tricky to do one-handed, though. All right, so our new word is a word that you've probably heard here in New Mexico. It's pretty specific to our environment. Do you know what our environment is? What kind of habitat do we live in? Well, we live in the desert here in New Mexico. And our word of the day, I'm going to hold it up for a moment so you can try to read it. Have you seen this word before? This is the word drought. Drought. Whenever I learn a new word, I like to say it in a little bit of a silly way so that I can make sure I remember. So I'm going to try to do it in like a really high-pitched mouse voice. Drought. That's right. Our word of the day today is drought. And if you've heard the word drought before in New Mexico, it's a big deal, especially in the summer. In the summer, we often have a drought. Sometimes we'll have years where we don't have a drought, but in New Mexico, it's very common. I'm wondering if you can have any ideas about what the word drought might mean. If there's another grown-up or another student in the room with you, tell them what you think. What does the word drought mean? So I did some work before we came here today, and I pulled up the definition. And a drought is a long period with very low rainfall, leading to a shortage of water. I'm going to add that definition up here. So I was just saying how in the summer, it's a really big deal when we have a drought. It's a big deal. And sometimes our city or even New Mexico has rules about how you can water your grass. They say, don't water your grass too much. Make sure that you don't take showers that are too long. And that's because we're in a drought and we want to save water. We don't know if we have enough water. So when you read our story today, I want you to think about this word and what a shortage of water means for people who live in an area that doesn't have a lot of water. And this is the opposite of yesterday's story, or not yesterday, sorry, last time we met, which was Wednesday, when it was the rainforest, where there was a lot of water, more than enough. And in this case, we're talking about an area or a time when there's not enough water. Okay, friends, so if you have your Frayer model ready to go, that we've been using, you can go ahead and get that out. You'll need your paper and your pencil. And I'm going to go ahead and show you up here my Frayer model. Okay, friends. So whenever we're on our Frayer model, we want to start with the definition. And our definition for the word drought. So let's put that word up here. Drought. D-R-O-U-G-H-T. Drought. We always want that word in the middle. And then we'll have the definition. And I'm going to make a little note here at the top that this is where my definition goes. In definition, we're going to use straight from our word of the day. So here we go, friends. A long period with very low rainfall leading to a shortage of water. And you don't have to write it exactly the same as this. You can put it in your own words as well. So I'm going to write it super fast. A long period with very low rainfall leading to a shortage of water. So you should have your definition written for the word drought. All right, friends, next we get to write our creative sentence. And creative sentence is my favorite part. This is where we get to think, what does a drought mean to me? Have I heard this word before? And how would I like to share it on my Freier's model? So I'm going to give you a moment to come up with your creative sentence and to share it with somebody who might be sitting next to you, or to just read it out loud or say it out loud to yourself and write it down. And then I'll write my creative sentence while you do that. So my creative sentence is about where we live. New Mexico often has droughts, and it's true for all parts of our state. All right, friends, the next part is synonyms. And if you remember, synonyms are words that have a similar meaning to our word of the day, drought. And so I did some research. I was like, drought, I can't think of it. But you know what? I have tools that can help me come up with my answers to what could a synonym be. And so what I came up with in my research is that dry spell is a phrase that means the same as drought. So I'm going to write that up here, dry spell. And that's something I don't often hear. But then I also found some really interesting antonyms. And so I'm going to add antonyms right below. An antonym means the opposite. And the antonym I heard for drought is monsoon, which was interesting because if we have droughts often in the summer, isn't it interesting that we also often have monsoons in the summer? And monsoons are torrential rains. That's just like a ton of rain all at once. And that would be the opposite. It would be an overabundance of water rather than very low rainfall. So I added antonyms today just because monsoon was so interesting. So friends, the last box I'm going to have you fill out on your own, and this is our picture that represents our word. What picture can you come up with that represents the word drought? I can't wait for all of you to work on that. Okay, friends. So today we learned our new word of the day, drought, and it's going to be very important in the story that's coming up soon with Miss Kay. But first, we have some fabulous word work with Miss Kraft. Have a great day learning, friends.
Hi, students. It's Mrs. Kraft, and I wanted to talk to you again about the nouns that we were learning about last time. So remember, we talked about a couple of types of nouns. The singular was our signal for singular, and our plural nouns, meaning more than one. Can you refresh your brains about what a noun is again? Say it into your TV. If you said a noun is a person, a place, a thing, an idea, or an animal, you are absolutely right. Good job. You're so smart and your brains are really thinking. So remember, we talked about singular nouns, which means only one thing. And then we talked about plural which means more than one. And then we moved into talking about how to make those nouns plural. Now, usually you just add an S, but we have some that are a little bit irregular. And so we talked about how we're going to make those plural also. Let's do a quick review of what we learned. Remember, we said when a noun ends in a Y, like bunny, if it has a consonant and then the letter Y, we're going to drop that Y and add an IES. It becomes bunnies. If the noun ends in Y, but it has a vowel and then the Y, we're just going to add an S, like that word keys. And then finally, our last one was if it ends in a strange letter like a D or an X, you are going to add an ES, like boxes. Makes it easier to say for us, doesn't it? All right. I wanted to talk about a couple of more ways to make nouns plural that are not quite, they're irregular. They're also irregular, and some of them don't follow a rule. So I'm going to test your brains now. Are you ready? All right, let's come and look at this poster back here. I have some words, some singular nouns, right? Man, mouse, child, tooth, and person. Those all mean one, don't they? So if we were playing our game, you'd be holding up your one finger. Now I'm going to test you. Do you know how to make these nouns plural, which means more than one? Let's look. If I have the word man, am I going to say mans or men? Let's use that in a sentence. There are lots of mans in my house. No, that doesn't sound quite right. I think I'm going to try men. There are a lot of men in my house. Yeah, let's circle that one. Good job if you knew that. Let's try the next one that's irregular. Mouse. Am I going to say mouses or am I going to say mice? I've heard that word mice, so I think that's going to be our best bet. If you thought mice, good job. Pat yourself on the back. Here's a really different one that doesn't follow a rule. Child. So I have a child. But if I have more than one child, do I have childs or do I have children? My mom has lots of childs. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? My mom has many children. That sentence makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and circle children. Let's just revisit that real quick. Look it. To make children plural, we added an R-E-N. That is really outside the box, right? We talked about those rules at school and how sometimes you can break that rule. This is definitely breaking that rule. So that's something we just have to remember. Let's look at our next one, tooth. Am I going to say teeth or am I going to say teeth? Interesting, isn't it? We don't need the S. It's just going to be teeth, and that means plural. See how smart you are? Wow, good job, guys. Let's try another one. Here's a really different one also. Our word is person. So I have one person. How am I going to make that word plural? Am I going to say persons or am I going to say people? Which one have you heard? I bet it's people, right? And look, that's almost a completely different word. It starts with the same letter, but who knew? Lots of people around, right? All right, good job. Let's do just a few more. And I wanted to show you a couple of these because they do have a rule. So let's look at this first one, leaf. The leaf is on the tree. But in autumn, many leaves fall off the tree, right? So we take this F because this word leaves Say that with me into the TV. Leafs. Wow, that sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? It's hard to say. It doesn't really roll off your tongue. Leafs. So our language took that F and it made it into a V-E-S. And now we can say leaves. Wow, that sounds prettier, doesn't it? All right, say that with me. Leaves. Nice job. I'm going to jump down to the number 8 down here, just so you can see the same rule applies. So we have that word elf. Sometimes maybe your mom calls you a little elf. I know my mom did. So if I have the word elf, am I going to say elves? Say that with me, elves. That doesn't sound quite right, does it? That's that same rule. Look we have an F. We're going to change that F into a V-E-S, elves. All right, good job on those. What I wanted to tell you about today is a new kind of noun. Well, not new. You've used it all your life, believe it or not, because you are this kind of noun, and so am I. This is a common noun and a proper noun. What does that mean? So you are a common noun because you go to school and you are a student. And you're learning from me right now. I'm a common noun because I'm a teacher. But I also have a name. And so do you. That's what makes us unique. So my name is Mrs. Kraft. And when I write that, I'm going to write that with a capital letter because it's a proper noun, right? Very proper. And you're going to write your name with the capital letter because that makes you proper. Did you know you could go from common to proper? You sure can. All right, let's talk about some common and proper nouns. And I want to see if you can figure these out for me. All right. So we have a little chart here, and I have some to test you with. So our common nouns, if I say the word restaurant, could be any restaurant, right? All right, so let's put that into our common noun box. But if I give you the name of a restaurant, McDonald's, that is a proper noun. What about another word? River. I love to go to the river. But you don't know which river it is, do you? So that's not quite as specific. If I wanted to be more specific, I could say the Rio Grande. I'm going to capitalize that because that's a proper noun. Rio Grande. And then it matches river, which is a common noun. You're doing so great. All right, let's try another one. What about the word person? That could apply to you, right? And me. We're all people. Remember our plural. Person, but what's the name of a person? What if I say Martin Luther King Jr.? I'm going to capitalize those letters, right? Because that's his name. So that becomes our proper noun. All right, let's try one more. If we eat for breakfast, if we eat some cereal, that's a common, right? Well, I don't know what kind of cereal you eat. Could be lots of different varieties. Let me tell you what kind of cereal I eat, and that is Raisin Bran. Do you guys like Raisin Bran? I love the raisins. That, do you see how I capitalized it? Because that is a proper noun. So let's put that on our chart. Are you guys getting the idea? If you are, give yourselves a pat on the back. You're doing so great. Common and proper nouns are so very important. And I would like to play a game with you right now. Remember, I love these games. So I'm going to invite my friend, Mrs. K, up, and she's going to help us with our game today. So we are going to stand up, do a little stretching, touch your toes, because we are going to play a common and proper noun game. Hi, Mrs. K. Thank you for joining me. Here's our game. If I say a common noun, I want you to do 3 jumping jacks. And if I say a proper noun, I want you to do arm circles. Okay, are you ready? And here's the key. If you guys keep getting them right, I'm going to go faster. So you ready? All right, get out those wiggles. Make sure you have plenty of room around you, that you're not going to hit anything when you do your jumping jacks. And let's try this. All right, Burger King. That is a proper noun. Yeah, Miss K got it. She's going to do her circles. Let's try one more. School. Is that common or proper? Oh, Miss K got it right. She's doing her jumping jacks. Remember, you're going to do 3. Awesome job. Are you ready to play? I'm going to have Miss K thank her for her time and showing you what to do, and let's play. Here we go. Ready? Bug. Is that a common? You did your arm circles? Great job. Oh, I'm sorry. That was jumping jacks. Right. Remember common? We're doing jumping jacks. Awesome. All right. How about school? So we just did school. All right. Cochiti Elementary School. That is a proper noun. That's right. You're going to do your arm circles. Great job. How about teacher? Ooh, that one is going to be some jumping jacks. Great job. All right, what about something we learned about last week, the diamondback rattlesnake? That's the name, isn't it? That's right. That's going to be arm circles. Yeah, proper noun. All right, let's try one more. Video game. Do your jumping jacks, video game. And what if I say PlayStation? Arm circles. All right, guys. You can keep playing this game at home. Maybe you can play with your parents. Maybe you can go out into the yard and call out common and proper nouns. It's really good practice for you. I'm so happy that you were able to join me today and learning about nouns. Remember, nouns are incredibly important. They belong in every single sentence that you are going to write. Sometimes it'll be a common, sometimes it'll be a proper, and sometimes it's going to be both. You wrote some sentences for me yesterday when you were making words singular and plural. Do you think today you'd be able to write some sentences using common nouns and proper nouns? That would be really cool. Remember, proper nouns need to have what? They need to have a capital letter, just like you're going to begin your sentences with the capital letter. Make sure you make those finger spaces in your sentences, and you put an end mark, period, comma, question mark, your choice. And make sure you reread your sentence to be sure it makes sense to you. All right, guys, I'm going to see you next time as we continue to talk about our types of nouns.
Hello, and welcome back. I'm Mrs. K, and I am so excited to share a wonderful book with you today. Today we're going to be reading Bringing the Rain to Kapiti Plain. Now, my good friend, Miss Kathy, let me borrow this book. I love it when friends share books with me. So because this is someone else's book, I'm going to take really good care of it while we read today. Now, before we read, I want to go back to our wonderful word of the day. What was this word? Drought, exactly. And if you'll remember, a drought is a long period with very low rainfall, leading to a shortage of water. While we read this book together today, did you know this book is a folk tale? Have you heard that word before? I love folk tales. Let's talk a little bit about that word. Maybe you've read some folk tales at school, or maybe at home or at your local library. A folk tale is a story that's passed down through generations. So when we say passed down through generations, we mean maybe parents or grandparents told this story to their kids, who then told it to their kids, who then told it to their kids. So when we think of folk tales, we think of a story that has been told orally, maybe through storytelling. So some folk tales weren't written down when they were first created. They were just shared out loud.
kind of like maybe you tell stories with members of your family. This folktale comes from the Nandi people who live in Kenya, which is in Africa. And as you'll hear in this story, our main character, maybe you can see him here, he's a herdsman. That means he takes care of the cattle on his farm. And he has a very important job to make sure his cattle get what they need. Think to yourself, what are some things that cows might need? Food, water, maybe a place to live, kind of like us. As we read this story, we're going to hear about a drought that comes to Kapiti Plain and how that impacts the environment of the animals and the people that live there. Our main character also has to come up with a very creative and exciting way to stop the drought so that his cattle get what they need. Okay, let's read it together and see what he does to solve the drought problem. Bringing the Rain to Kapiti Plain by Verna Armina. Pictures by Beatrice Vital. And this book was published by Penguin Publishing. This is the great Kapiti Plain, all fresh and green from the African rains, a sea of grass for the ground birds to nest in, and patches of shade for wild creatures to rest in, with acacia trees for giraffes to browse on, and grass for the herdsmen to pasture their cows on. Yesterday we talked about the word environment, or the surroundings where plants, animals, or people live. Look at this beautiful environment for all these animals. But one year, the rains were so belated that all of the big wild creatures migrated. Then Kipat helped to end this terrible drought. And this story tells how it all came about. Ooh, I heard an important word in there. Migrated. Have you heard that word before? Let's read our picture. These animals are migrating. What are they doing? Yeah, they're moving. They have to leave. They have to move from one environment to another. Maybe because they don't have what they need in this environment. Let's read more. This is the cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti Plain. Wow. Have you ever seen a big, dark cloud like that? Maybe right before it starts to rain or thunder. This is the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti Plain. Oh, what happened to all the grass? It didn't have enough water, so it's dying. I have a feeling that's going to be a problem for all those birds. These are the cows, all hungry and dry, who mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti Plain. So it said that these cows, this group of cattle, was hungry and thirsty. Why were they hungry? Was it because if there wasn't rain, the grass couldn't grow, and the cows eat the grass, so they didn't have enough food and they didn't have enough water? Yikes, that's a big problem. This was Kipat, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like the big stork bird. Kipat, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. the big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. I love this picture. Oh, this is a good page. You ready? This is the eagle who dropped a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, it shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. Wow, look at this illustration of the eagle. I love how detailed his feathers are. This makes me think, maybe I'll use this illustration as an inspiration to draw my own picture of an eagle later. Maybe that's something you could do. I like to take inspiration from illustrations. Let's see what happens with that feather. This is the arrow Kapiti put together with a slender stick and an eagle feather from the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like the big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. This is the bow, so long and strong, and strung with a string, a leather thong, a bow for the arrow Kapiti put together with a slender stick and an eagle feather. From the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like a big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead. It needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. Let's make a prediction. What do you think our main character, Kapiti, is going to do with this bow and this arrow? Let's find out. This was the shot that pierced the cloud and loosened the rain and thunder loud. A shot from the bow, so long and strung with a string, a leather thong. A bow for the arrow Kapiti put together with a slender stick and an eagle feather. From the eagle who happened to drop a feather that helped to change the weather. Wow. So tell me in your own words, what happened on this page? Yeah, so he used that arrow from the eagle feather to shoot up into the cloud and pierce the cloud, and then down came the rain. It's almost like that antonym for drought that Miss Kathy taught us. Do you remember that word? Monsoon. It fell near Kapiti, who watched his herd as he stood on one leg like the big stork bird. Kapiti, whose cows were so hungry and dry, they mooed for the rain to fall from the sky, to green up the grass, all brown and dead, that needed the rain from the cloud overhead. The big black cloud, all heavy with rain, that shadowed the ground on Kapiti plain. Wow, look how it's starting to turn green. Wow. I really like to go out after it's rained here in the desert and to look how much greener all of our plants look here. It's kind of like Kapiti. So the grass grew green and the cattle fat, and Kapiti and his wife had a little Kapiti. Wow, it's back to how everything was before the drought. Because they were able to get all that rain, all of the animals were able to migrate back to Kapiti Plain. Lovely. Who tends the cows now and shoots down the rain when black clouds shadow Kapiti Plain. I like the way this book ends because our main character's son is now the new herdsman. And this kind of reminds me of how our folk tales are passed down from generation to generation. These very strong stories that we carry with us. Just like their job, being a herdsman, was something they carried with them. I love this book. I have a challenge for you today. Miss Kathy talked a little bit about how we can think about this word drought and what we can do to make sure that we are saving the water that we have, because many of us live in a desert, right? I'm going to challenge you today to think about 2 or 3 ways that you can preserve that water. Maybe turning off the water when you brush your teeth. Or maybe turning off the water while you're putting soap on your hands and rubbing them together so we don't waste water. I also encourage you to maybe in your library at home, or maybe when you go back to school, ask your teacher or a librarian if you can check out some folk tales. I bet you'll find some other really good books. Next up, we have a really wonderful writing activity with Miss Lori. I can't wait to see what she has for you.
Welcome back, friends. And I am so glad to be with you again today. I'm Miss Lori, and we're going to continue our informational report writing. And I'm very excited about it because something really fun and exciting happened last night. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute. But first, I want to say a big thank you to Miss Anna for reading to us today. I love Bringing the Rain to Kapiti Plain. That's such a wonderful book. And we got to hear about some of those nonfiction ideas inside a fiction story, right? We got to learn about drought and what happened to the animals during a drought, which is a real thing that happens, even though it was within a fictional story, because unfortunately when we need rain, we probably can't shoot an arrow up into a cloud and then have the rain come down. But it was a beautiful story. So we are going to continue thinking about doing a writing project that's going to go over the next few episodes that we're together. So if you would please make sure that you have your writing journal out and with you so that you can follow along with what we're going to be doing today. And if you don't have a writing journal with you, if you could just get a piece of paper and put down the things that we're going to talk about today on it, that would be great. And keep it somewhere special, because the next episode that we do, when we come back together, we're going to be taking the work that we've done on our last episode, the work that we are continuing to do today, and we will build on that in our next episode, so that at the end, if you're following along and you're doing what we're doing together, then you will end up with your very own informational report on a topic that you're interested in. So let's think about what we did yesterday. So yesterday we talked about the first thing that we needed to do was to brainstorm. So one of the things that we can use to help us in our brainstorm is our vocabulary that we've been going over this session, this theme. And remember that our theme is how do we react to changes in nature? So we've been talking about the environment and what happens when we take things out of the environment. That was our book yesterday. What happens when we cut down trees? How does that change our environment? And then today, we talked about drought and what happens to our environment in drought. So those are things that happen in nature, and we have to think about how people and animals react to those changes. So these are two words that you could use as part of your informational report. So I'm going to move this over now since we've done our review so that we can get a full view of our chart that we're going to be working with. Okay, so yesterday we started by talking about brainstorming, coming up with a whole bunch of different ideas. I hope that you had some ideas that you came up with. And you know you can always tweet those out to our APS at Home Twitter feed, and we can share them with our friends. So here we go. So yesterday we learned about the Amazon, which has a rainforest and in it. We could add some things to the Amazon if you wanted to that were nonfiction. You could talk about the different types of animals that live there, the different types of weather they have, which brings us to our next area that we talked about, maybe doing a report on, which would just be weather in general. And there's different types of weather that happen. Then we had the word technology, because technology was our focus of our learning the last couple weeks that we were together. I need to get a pen. What color do I want today? Let's see, I used red yesterday. I think I'm just going to use a nice thick black one. So we talked about technology, and you could have different types of technology. And then we talked about the night sky as maybe being a topic that we would like to explore. And the stars, the planets, and the moon are all things that are found in the night sky. And then I was thinking last night, you know, what would be something else? Because just because we were done with our lesson, my brain was still really thinking about it. Was your brain still thinking about things that you are interested in, that you could write a report on? So I was thinking something that would be really timely for us is we could do a report on the coronavirus, right? That is something that has changed our whole world and the way that we're doing everything. It's the reason that I get to be with you here, friends, instead of in a classroom. So we are going to, I'm going to put that up here. So that could be a topic. Oh, that didn't come out very thick. So the coronavirus, that's something that we could also do a report on. So I talked to you just a minute ago when I started out today saying that something really cool happened last night. And I'm wondering if any of you thought of what it was. We had a special type of moon last night. Does anybody know what kind of moon we had? Well, I'm going to try and show you because we're going to be talking about technology, using our resources online to find information today. So I found some pictures, and we'll see how this is going to all work out. So I'm going to go into a search, and I'm going to, I Googled something, which is a word, right? Meaning to we put it into Google to find something. And we had what was called a pink supermoon, or a super pink moon. And I wanted to find a picture. Let's see if we can see that. If it could, oops. It was big a second ago. Let me see if I can get it. So that is the supermoon. And the way I found out about it was I have a friend who lives in Durango, and she put a picture of this that she took out of her window up on Facebook, and I saw it this morning, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that. And then I was texting with another friend of mine that doesn't live close by but is really into astronomy. And Mark told me that when I showed him a picture of the pink moon, he Googled it and he sent me this definition, which I thought was interesting. It said, a pink moon was named after one of the first flowers to bloom in the spring, the wild ground phlox, which also goes by the name of moss pink. So that was something that we did and found some information. And we did it by social distancing because we can't all be together right now because of the coronavirus. So I found that really interesting. And I think maybe if I was going to write a report, I might do it on the moon and see what other kinds of special moons there are. So we are going to talk today about how to use online resources to find information for our reports. But before we do that, I want to go back and revisit our checklist. So we started talking about this checklist yesterday, or the last time we were together, and we will continue to add to this checklist across the rest of our unit. So yesterday, we want to think about, did you brainstorm a topic that you're interested in and that you can research using available resources? And I touched on what available resources could be. Maybe you have some books at home, or we're going to talk today about online resources because those are the ones that probably are going to be the most accessible right now because of the social distancing and the stay-at-home that we have to be doing. So we're going to learn about that. So today what we're going to focus on our checklist is how to select a credible and reliable source, and we're going to talk about taking notes. So let's get ready to do that. Hopefully you have your journal out. Hopefully you've done all of your work. So before we go on, I do want to refer back to the lovely report that Miss Kathy wrote yesterday on the book that she read, because this is exactly what we're going to be doing, is we're going to be working together to learn how to write an informational report. And that's basically what Miss Kathy did. So she chose the Amazon because it was the book that she read with you. And I'm going to read it to you again so that it's back and it's fresh in our mind about the things that she found important. So she started with a topic sentence, and we're going to talk all about topic sentences and how a paragraph is laid out in our next session. So the Amazon rainforest is an important environment full of diverse plants and animals. Humans need the rainforest because it produces 20% of the world's oxygen. If humans continue to cut down the rainforest, we will lose beautiful plants and animals. What do you think humans should do to protect the rainforest? So this was her informational paragraph that she wrote based on one book. We're not going to use we're not going to use a fiction book to base our information on. We're going to try to find only good, reliable nonfiction sources and to use to make our paragraphs. So let's go back to thinking about how to select those. So if you have access to internet, you may have a computer at home, or you can use an iPad, or you can even do this on your phone. And if you don't have a smartphone, maybe your parents do. Anything that can search the internet is anything that you can do a report, use to do a report on. Okay, so we're going to talk about different types of websites. And first, I have a chart that I made. I'm going to put that up so that we can talk about it. So who knew that there are different kinds of websites? I can tell you a long time ago that I did not know that there were different kinds of websites. And I actually have a very short story I'll tell you that'll probably give you a good laugh, or it should give you a good laugh. So a long time ago, before any of you guys were born, I used to teach 4th grade at Zuni Elementary. And we were a technology school, and this is back when technology was not being used a whole lot in schools. We were just starting to get to using it in school. So we would go to the computer lab. But back then, we just had a projector that projected whatever was on my computer. And I learned a huge lesson that day. So we were studying in 4th grade U.S. history, and I was showing the kids how to take a virtual tour of the White House in Washington, D.C. And I told the kids to type in a website that was a .com website. And when we went to that website, it was not what I expected at all. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is not the website I want you guys to be seeing. So I learned right then and there that there was a difference between .com and .gov, because the website I wanted the kids to see was a .gov website that had a tour of the actual White House in Washington. So that was my lesson, and I learned it very fast in a little bit of an uncomfortable way. But we did okay, and we moved on and got to see the virtual tour. So there are several different types of websites. And I'm going to show you right here some of the ones that are out there and whether they are good for you to use as research websites for the informational report. So if you have a website that says .com on it, the type of website, that means commercial. .com means commercial. So Amazon.com, right? I'm sure everybody's heard of Amazon, or Target.com, Walmart.com. Those are all commercial. The purpose of those websites are usually to sell you something or sell you an idea. So we're going to call that not a credible website for the purposes of what we're doing in this next couple weeks, okay? And that also brings us to this .net. Sometimes, this is not one that you hear of all the time, but it's one that is out there. That means network. And it's also used by businesses, so I wouldn't call that one credible either. Now, we have other ones that are called .org, right? So those are organizations. So you have the Heart Society, the Lung Society. Those are different that are .orgs. If you have a .org, it could be that the material on it is appropriate, but you have to think about it. And you have to maybe talk to the adults in your home and ask them, do you think the information on this .org site is something that would be good for me to use as a source for my report? Okay, so you have to think about that one, because sometimes the information can be very good, high quality. Sometimes you might have to think about it. .edu, you see this a lot, right? We have APS.edu. Since I work for APS, that's our website. It means that it's education. So sometimes it is to sell a school. So you might have a college that's looking for it, and that is what you're doing. Then we have .gov, and I went over that. Those are government websites. Those are pretty good, and you can use those. So always yes, if it's a .gov, that'll give you good factual information. And then I put this one down here because I'm interested in my other chart, the night sky, the moon. So NASA is our space agency, and so they have a lot of wonderful information. It's a government agency, and it is to inform us about astronomy and science. So it's a yes always, okay? So these are the different types of online resources that you can use. And this information will be in the packet for this week, okay? So I'm going to have to go more quickly than I thought I was. Wow. Okay, so what I did is I pulled up NASA.gov, and it has all kinds of different sites that have all kinds of different information around it. It has, I'll read them to you, Earth's moon. It has Artemis, which is a project that NASA's doing that has to do with the moon. It's a program to return astronauts to the moon in 2024. So I just learned something right there. They have a video about the moon, about Apollo 13 when they went. There's another article on moon dust that is settling. So there's all different kinds of articles on here around the moon. So I would be choosing one of these articles to start my research for the moon. Okay, very quickly, and we will go over this, we'll start with this next time, is taking notes on your websites. Okay, so you're going to identify a website that you want to use for your information, and you're going to make a graphic organizer. It does not have to be this graphic organizer, but you will want to make a graphic organizer. So this will be included in the handouts that are on the website, so you can use this, okay? So we will come back and we will start with this actually next time we get together. So I just want to remind everybody of the wonderful work we did today and say a big thank you to Mrs. Kraft and Miss Kay and Miss Kathy for the wonderful things that they showed you. And again, I just want to thank you guys for tuning in and joining us today for At Home with APS.